Michael McClelland. McClelland. Oh, God. I'm sorry, Michael. I apologize. You know the drill.
Yes. Thank you very much, and I have a very brief letter, and I'll read it out. And I'm not representing any client. I'm an architect who does quite a bit of work in the city, and so this issue is of concern to me. Dear committee, at a recent symposium at Harbourfront Centre on tall buildings, it was called "How Tall is Too Tall," the overall discussion drifted towards one significant issue. It wasn't about height. It was about use. Toronto's new towers have been predominantly residential, and it was felt that this large influx of residential development was removing diversity from within the downtown core, and specifically removing places of work for cultural industries that are a key component of Toronto's economy. Many commented that the height of the building was much less important than the podium and whether the podium contained a mix of uses. The report before you is well intended and does address important concerns about height in certain areas, but it does not constitute a full planning response to the issue of tall buildings. Urban design and built form standards tend to describe how new development should create no negative impact. But good planning should go further than that. It should be based on what creates the most positive impact. So a number of key questions remain. How does this document address a city strategy for maintaining a mix of uses within the downtown core? How does it ensure that the public realm is adequately enhanced by the spectacular amount of private development? And how will these urban design performance standards fit within a larger planning context, or will they curtail or compromise the potential for future planning strategies? The report also deals with heritage in a very cursory manner. While recognizing the standards and guidelines for conservation of historic places in Canada, it provides a series of comments that contradict the principles of those very standards and guidelines are based on. A careful understanding of the specific values of each historic place. And I think Julian Smith spoke very eloquently this morning about Deer Park United Church to talk about how you need to understand the significant values of a specific place before you launch into prescriptive measures about how you address the building. Heritage conservation in the downtown core is very complex, and these guidelines, such as suggesting 20 meter setbacks where you have a heritage building on Yonge Street, are simply too broad and potentially very limiting. Heritage needs to be addressed in a much larger context. We still have a city where numerous buildings of value, such as 81 Wellesley East, to name only one, have never even been assessed. And Councillor McConnell, the Albany Club, is not a listed or designated building. So there's just, we need a lot of work that needs to be done very holistically about how to address heritage, and I'm very concerned that the prescriptive standards included in this document are not sufficient. While I understand there's been extensive public consultation process leading up to the preparation of this report, I would ask for a deferral to allow for some time for the final report to be reviewed and commented on prior to its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions? Councillor McMahon.
Hi there. Thank you very much. It's very informative. Do you have any ideas as to how we could better balance heritage with the demand for intensification and development?
Well, one of the things for sure is I think that the heritage building should be recognized. I think we need to have a larger discussion about what's a heritage building, what's not a heritage building. I think that the values of the building need to be understood better, the property, and for example, you had that discussion this morning about Deer Park United Church, that it wasn't about bricks and mortar, it was actually about the place of community. There's much larger discussions that have to happen about that, but I think it's a listing of all the public benefits that contribute to proper development within the downtown core. And I would say, again, the key one is this issue of preserving mixed use in the downtown core and a variety of uses. And that also means a variety of textures about the different types of buildings that exist there. So we may need to be broader based in looking at more heritage buildings in the downtown core, but at the same time, not sort of suggest that they are shrink wrapped and can't be touched.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Vaughan.
I'm intrigued by this notion of the podium and mandatory, sort of a set of rules that would make mixing the podium mandatory rather than worrying about the condition of the tower, and whether or not you think that there is broad-based support within the development industry to create things like mandatory commercial use in the podiums, especially in proximity to the downtown, is part of what's missing from this report.
I can't say that what level of support there might be, but I think in my mind that makes a huge amount of sense. I don't know that I understand any urban difference between a 40-story building and a 60-story building, but I do know that if the podium is bland, and if the podium removes uses that had been there that created the mix that was the reason for developing on the site in the first place, that's a significant problem. And I think that the podiums aren't particularly good residential spaces, and so it's quite possible that there might be an interest in providing a series of uses. And I would think this report, rather than simply being an urban design and built form report, which then could be assumed to have covered all the issues, it really should address how these other broader issues are addressed. So how do you address the issue of mixed use, and how is that inclusionary zoning? Is it what kinds of processes that need to take place for that to happen? But I think we have this huge amount of development occurring, and we need to know how to handle it in a better manner.
So what would your thoughts be on a permit pulling system that would allow projects to gain height when they invested back into the neighborhood, things like nonprofit space for cultural amenities, or affordable rental housing, or commercial space, or public parking as opposed to simply private parking space?
I think that would be a very wise thing to have. I think that would be a good thing to have a discussion about, because in fact, again, I think if you added more floors to a building, would it matter if, in fact, you also, in that exchange, got the kinds of amenities or the kinds of things that maintained a vibrant city? Because you do have a concern. I would think we all should have a concern that if we just have residential buildings being built, we've lost the mixed-use character of the downtown core.
Councillor Matlow.
I wonder, Michael, if you've given this any thought, and if this has not been a focus of yours, then just say so. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion regarding subway nodes and intensifying along rapid transit routes, and we often plan our transit around how we'd like to plan our city and where we'd like to focus intensified development. However, we don't as often discuss how we want to plan our transit based on where we have tall buildings in the first place and where we'd like to plan. So, for example, we often talk about intensifying along Yonge, but there are realities about the Yonge subway line where it is overcapacity during rush hour. It often takes many trains until you can even get on the train in the morning. So have you given any thought as to how we can better blend our transit planning and our urban planning or our building planning so that it really can be a comprehensive vision as we move forward in both routes?
That's the question of the year, I think, actually. Of the week. Okay. I think they're extremely important to be. Well, that's, again, the kind of holistic issue. And I would say that the concern I have with this report, as good as the report is, the concern I have is that it's all about trying to tweak certain heights of buildings stylistically in terms of their setbacks and how they might have the minimum impact, when there's much larger issues that need to be addressed. At least a strategy has to be put forward as to how those issues are going to be addressed. And I think transit is exactly one of those. You are finding, however, in the downtown core that people are walking to work.
And one last question, Mr. Chair. Would you agree that, as somebody who lives in Midtown Toronto, I often want to go to the inner suburban areas of the city, such as Etobicoke or Scarborough. Should we be planning now so that, transit-wise, so that if I want to be able to get out to Scarborough, for example...
Councillor Matlow,
yes.
Really, downtown. I know it's fun and we'd all love to, but let's just stay on the downtown, the study area, 3 wards.
Oh, I was being...
None of which have subway proposals
rhetorical.
currently.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay.
Anyone else? No? Michael, thank you very much.